Up for debate, our Sweet 16 brackets are back, and just in time for Halloween, we're competing your favorite fears head to head to find out the best one, which will be our spookiest Halloween fear. Stick around, it's coming up next. This is Up for Debate, episode number 93, recorded October 25th, 2017. Cheers for fears. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Up for Debate, the podcast with the spookiest topics you'll see around. I'm Sean Jennings, joined as always by the Crypt Keeper himself, Mr. Matt Mariani, over there doing the Monster Mash.
Ooh, pretty spooky entrance here. Scary Sean Jennings.
Is that our extent of scary stuff? Is we're like introducing Scary Matt, and I'm Scary Sean. I think that's pretty good.
Skeleton Sean. Sean the skeleton. Keeper of the skeletons.
I'd quit while you're ahead. You're gonna want to let that one go. Matt, this is an exciting episode for us because our Sweet 16 bracket is back. We've done this twice before on the show. If people haven't listened to Matt, you might not even know this. According to our stats, our most popular episodes ever, among them, in the top 2 or 3, was when we did novelty songs, the best novelty song, Sweet 16. And do you remember the winner of that bracket, Matt?
That was the hit song. Nope, I cannot remember it. I cannot remember what that song was.
Matt,
sing a couple bars and I'll be able to remember
it. How does it go?
It was the safety dance.
No,
safety dance?
That's not a novelty song. I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes began an eerie sight. Oh, man, I used to know the words to this. But to my surprise, they did the mash. They did the monster mash. The monster mash. It was a graveyard smash. I sound just like Bobby Pickett, don't I?
That sounded like a little bit like Elvis.
A little bit. Oh, like Elvis doing the monster mash? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Elvis in his prime.
Yes.
Classic vintage Elvis.
Yeah, no one wants fat Elvis.
Yeah. Speaking of vintage, before we begin this episode, I'm drinking a vintage beverage right here.
Oh, is it like a Jolt Cola? Oh, no, look at that.
Smooth vanilla Coke. Goes down smooth, tastes like nothing else. The crisp, refreshing, tasty flavor of vanilla Coke. Sean, the only thing that's scary about this vanilla Coke is, and I guess the sugar. There's an awful lot of sugar.
Yes, the diabetes, yes.
That's pretty scary too. But drink vanilla Coke and have a happy and safe Halloween.
Wow. This message not brought to you by Coca-Cola. Yes, I love vanilla Coke as well. We've never done a soda episode. Why haven't we done a soda episode?
I'm sure we have.
No, we definitely haven't.
That was probably like our first or second episode.
No.
Like that's there's no way we haven't done a soda
I'm writing
episode.
this down. Soda.
There's no way we haven't done an episode where we both challenge each other to drink disgusting soda.
Ooh.
How have we not done that?
Have you ever had that like a stevia, like weird fake sugar soda?
No.
I'm going to order you a bunch and send it to your house.
Have you ever had soda?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to order one of those and send that to your house.
All right, we're going to do a crazy soda episode, but we can't do that because we're doing fears tonight, Matt. We've got 16. I'll hold up to the camera if you're watching the video version. There is our bracket. I've got a printed copy. You can check it out. It is like a Sweet 16, like March Madness, but we got fears listed on here. We got 16 of them. Now, Matt, before we get into this, I want to mention a couple things right off the top. One, and I think this is important, many people in this country suffer with fears. It is a debilitating thing, and I don't want people to think we're making light of it. We are a fun and funny show, and we're going to crack some jokes here, but it's important for people not to feel offended or irritated that we may call their fear dumb or irresponsible. We realize people don't get to choose the fears they have. We're just doing this for entertainment purposes, so please, no one take offense. Second, I'd also like to mention that we are not doctors or licensed medical physicians. So
we're not?
Believe it or not, I know 93 episodes in, people shouldn't be surprised. But I say that for 2 reasons. One, we don't diagnose things in people. And 2, I'm going to try to pronounce these Latin-sounding names of the fears. And if they're wicked wrong, please, I don't care. So any disclaimers you'd like to put in front, Matt?
The only disclaimer I have is, drink this tasty vanilla Coke responsibly. You don't want to drink an entire case of it. I know, as tempting and as good as it is, but please enjoy your vanilla Coke responsibly.
Wow, thank you for that,
Also,
Matt.
Halloween's coming up. You're going to do some trick or treating. You're going to want to do some candy eating as well. Be conscientious and responsible while eating your candy. Don't just eat it all at once. It's a good way to get a tummy ache. So,
Wow, we're just full of good tips for people, which is very unusual. Now, Matt, I don't know if you gave any, because apparently we've had criticism in the past that you and I don't come very prepared to the program, which is shocking to me. So I'll ask you.
yeah, I prepare for this like it's my job.
Well, exactly. So have you thought about the criteria on which you will be judging these fears? Because they're going to go, this is not where we talk about the best. I mean, one-on-one, head-to-head, the fears will compete, and we have to pick a winner each time. So have you considered any criteria you'll be using to cast your vote?
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to be evaluating this on a fear rubric. All right. It's a scale based on the severity of the fear, based on the debilitation of the fear, like how debilitating that fear is. So that's really my criteria going in. I'm trying to see how the fear can permanently affect people, how widespread it is, and that's really it. Just trying to go in and just see how impacting it is. Also, how common, not common, but I think a fear of a being stared at by ducks is going to be less, impactful than a fear of spiders or something that you're going to see in everyday life.
How many spiders do you
let's
see?
let's see which fear is truly the one with the least cheer.
Very true. Now, I'll be looking at, Matt, because I think we're in a lot of agreement. I'll be looking at 3 key things when it comes to judging fears. The first is, you mentioned it as well, rate of occurrence. How common are these fears? A good fear should be somewhat common. I think the second thing for me is danger level. How dangerous is the thing you're afraid of? A good fear, if you're afraid of hugs, that's kind of a crappy fear because there's not a lot of danger there. You want to be afraid of something with bite, right? The last one, and I think this is an interesting metric, positive outcomes of your fear. Because we don't want to think of fears as bad things necessarily. Fears can be good things. They keep you safe. If you're afraid of guns, that's good. If you're afraid of clouds, not really. We'll have to work in trying to figure out what the upside of that is. But I'm going to look for those things as we go those here. Matt, would you like to hear our first matchup?
Bring it on.
And I think this is a classic, very common fear, some of the most common in America. We're going to do arachnophobia versus ophidiophobia, which is the fear of spiders versus the fear of snakes.
All right, here we go. Spiders versus snakes.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay. Coming out of the gate, I'm giving this fear some careful consideration. This is a tough one, by the way, just, evaluating it on face value. Both of these things, spiders and snakes, I would say the legitimacy factor is pretty high. Spiders can hurt you, snakes can hurt you, for sure. All right, now let's go to the next level. All right, we're talking about practicality and application, okay? How can I apply that? I think that right now I'm leaning towards one of these very strongly. Okay, I'm leaning towards one of them very strongly because I think that, well, I want to hear your opinion on it first.
Okay.
But I think that one of these is definitely a more debilitating and appropriate fear than the other one. But I want to get your thoughts on that.
Okay.
What do you think?
Fair enough. Yeah, looking at those 3 metrics, I agree. I think both have a certain level of danger associated with them. There are poisonous and deadly versions of each. Although I think people overthink the danger aspects. Most snakes and spiders you will run into in your daily life tend not to be poisonous. Maybe they're creepy, but they're not necessarily dangerous. They're not going to kill you for the most part. Unless you live in the Amazon or Australia or somewhere where they actually do that. North America, not really a big issue. Rate of occurrence, I'm kind of split on this one because, again, I would say spiders are more common than snakes, but the spiders that are more common are smaller and weaker than the snakes you might run into more commonly. And lastly, what are some positive? Obviously, they're both have positives, right? Because those creatures can kill you. So it's good to have those fears. It keeps you alive. It keeps you safe. And I would also argue that both fears keep you away from zoos, which for some people might be good. Maybe they don't like the zoo and they need an excuse to not go when they're invited. So I think there is an upside there as well. We got to look at the bright side here. If I have to pick the better fear of the two, I'm going to go with spiders being the better fear. And here is why. I think snakes are cool. I think spiders are more visually scary than snakes because some are hairy, some aren't. They've got all the extra legs. Snakes are just like tubes that move around. And I think that it's a better fear because snakes are cool pets. Spiders are weird pets. You know what I'm saying? I just think that snakes are more acceptable in society than spiders are. Therefore, it makes more sense to be fearful of them. Matt, where do you land?
Okay. This is good because I was leaning way towards snakes, and I still am. Snakes as the better fear. I'm going to make the argument that the difficulty in overcoming the fear should play a role in how strong the fear is.
Sure.
And I think it is more difficult. Not that I'm a therapist or anything, but I'm going to say it's probably more difficult to overcome a fear of snakes than it is a fear of spiders because it is just more natural to be able, like, you can kill a spider way easier than
Very
you
true.
can kill a snake.
I agree.
Okay. Just our natural defense mechanisms. We could step on a spider, or we could squish a spider, but a snake, you gotta probably get some kind of tool to take it out. Like, you're probably not going to wrestle that thing with your bare hands. Also, snakes are more natural. How do I word this? They're more when we encounter a snake in nature, it is more likely to be it's definitely more likely to be the aggressor than a spider is. Snakes are very territorial. They're not going to go out of their way to try to hunt you, but if you stumble on a snake's nest, I think that a snake you'd have a higher likelihood of the snake recoiling and striking at you than a spider, which there's a pretty good chance it might just run away because you're way bigger than it. You're like a continent to a spider.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what?
I'm going to say
on the flip side of your argument, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to take your argument and I'm going to turn it around because while I agree snakes there's a reason to fear them because they are larger and therefore harder to kill, I would argue spiders are scarier because they are smaller and harder to detect. A spider can sneak up on you. A spider can fall on you. A spider can get in your clothes in a way a snake really couldn't, at least not easily or without being noticed. There's a surprise element associated with spiders.
I mean, that's fair. A spider can definitely go without detection, but does that really mean that it's scarier? I think that a snake can just as easily go without detection. It can hide in corners. It can hide in sheds. It can hide in dark places. It can be right behind you right now, right by your feet, trying to like take a nice bite out of your ankle. When you're in the woods, for example, like you'll never see a camouflage snake until it's too late.
But the same for a spider.
Same for a spider, but I still maintain that the snake is scarier because it is much more likely to attack you in nature than a spider.
But again, we have to remember, and this is I know we're going to keep running into this. It's not about which animal is scarier. It's about which is the better fear for someone to have. And Matt, in the interest of time, because we have to get through 8 of these head-to-heads in an hour, I will compromise and I'll agree because we do have a tiebreaker situation. You know, if we need it, we have it. I don't think we need it. I will agree with you that snakes are the better fear as long as we agree that the snake is the cooler animal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, totally.
Sold. I'll take it. Snakes are moving on to the next, to the Elite Eight in our tournament. I keep writing snacks, a fear of snacks, but that's not right. It's snakes. Those are very different things. All right, Matt, next up, we're going to jump around on the bracket a bit because we kind of did like 50-50 kind of normal-ish fears versus crazy fears, like weird, unusual ones. And let's do a head-to-head in the weird, unusual one, Matt. Maybe you have turophobia. You might also have trypophobia. Are you afraid of cheese? Or are you afraid of holes? Or the worst.
How about if you're afraid of both?
Swiss cheese?
What if you're afraid of Swiss cheese? Yeah.
That's kind of why I put them together. Now you went first on this last one, so I guess I'll take the opportunity to go first on this one. Cheese versus holes. I'll start with the danger level. I think this one is very obvious. I think, first of all, cheese, by the way, does have some level of danger. Blue cheese is fungus. I mean, you can get poisoned by bad cheese. So there is a risk there. However, I would argue the risk of holes to be much greater than that of cheese because you can fall into one or get tripped up on one or in other ways be injured by a hole. Rate of occurrence, I feel like holes are very common, more common than cheese. I'm not just thinking big holes. You got to think holes of any shape and size. Right? Holes are in everything we do every day. It's super common. And that's scary if you're someone who has that fear. Lastly, positive outcomes. It's good to be afraid of some holes, like a manhole cover that's been opened. Like that's a hole you don't want to fall in. But I don't know really what the upside is of being afraid of holes all the time. Now, being afraid of cheese, that means you're not going to be around cheese very often, so you're probably going to keep mice away. So that there's an upside to that. If you're lactose intolerant, it's a great fear to have because then there's no incentive for you to eat cheese. So I think there's a little more upside on cheese. I don't know, Matt. What do you think of these two fears?
Wow. So are you going with cheese?
No, I'm not going to tell you till you give me your reasons, and then you give yours, and I'll back it up. I do know which one I'm going with.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say almost the same things that holes are, I think, the more primordial fear of the two. Because, when we encounter the holes in nature, we're afraid of falling into holes. It's kind of like, it reminds me of the fear of heights, right? Like nobody's afraid of heights. You're afraid of falling off of heights. Or you're afraid of something bad happening to you while you're high up. We're not afraid of the hole, but we're afraid of falling down the hole. And I think that's a pretty reasonable and rational fear. Like you don't want to fall down a giant hole and get stuck there forever. Like, cheese, on the other hand, I could see you being afraid of cheese if you are from a culture that has never seen cheese before. If you see this foreign object that people are eating and using to cook with and all kinds of things like that, cheese can be pretty intimidating. It can almost look like a fungus or some kind of organism itself.
Very strong flavor to many cheeses. So much variety and so many things that are considered cheese.
The smells and so I don't know. I really want to give this one a cheese. I really got to find some kind of reason to give it to cheese, but I'm just kind of drawing a blank, and we've got a bunch to do still yet. So I think I'm just gonna give it to holes.
I think for me, I was gonna pick holes as well, and I think that's what we'll go with. But for me, my monkey brain, right? What is a hole? A hole is a void. A void that can be anything. And I think that there is something fundamentally, like at the base level of psychology, fearful of the unknown and the voidness of a hole. And as I think about it, like I'm getting a little afraid of holes right now. So I can totally get where that's coming from. I think the fear of cheese for me, I get your argument of like the fear of the unknown argument, and cheese can be intimidating, but it's also like you can avoid cheese. I think that's one of mine, rate of occurrence. Like I feel like it's a lot easier to avoid cheese than it is holes.
Yeah, I found myself really trying to justify the cheese fear. I'd really like to meet somebody that's afraid of cheese and kind of ask them why. why they have agoraphobia. But as Friedrich Nietzsche says, when you stare into the cheese stares back at you.
He was a very smart man. Very smart man. All right, we're going to jump back over to our more traditional fear side, Matt. And I like putting these two together, kind of like snakes and spiders, because we have both agoraphobia and claustrophobia, two of the most common fears in the world. That would be the fear of open spaces and the fear of small spaces.
Huh. Okay, I guess I'll field this one first. We'll start with agoraphobia, the fear of open spaces. Though I feel like its counterpart, claustrophobia, is more common. Agoraphobia, I think, has there's an undercurrent in society that that experiences this agoraphobia. I think that right off the bat, there's one that I think is more understandable from a fundamental level. And I think claustrophobia, I just understand it more. Just looking at these two, kind of thinking about them and really thinking through the phobias. Claustrophobia, I understand more because, we don't like to be constrained. We don't like to be trapped. The feeling of loss of control is one of the most human fears that we can have. One of the most fundamentally human fears, that loss of control. We don't want to be bound. We don't want to be captured. We don't want to be confined. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we can't move, where we have no control over our environment. It's a very, very human fear. And it's one that I think is extremely, extremely debilitating and extremely difficult to overcome. Agoraphobia, on the other hand, with fear of the open spaces, I think that's a different kind of fear entirely, isn't it? Like it's one of those fear of unknown things. Like anything can happen. We're in an open space. Like there's so much possibility. There's an infinite void of adversaries that I can encounter with. Like just we don't know what's going to happen. And it's the same kind of concept of loss of control. I think that in claustrophobia, we feel like the environment has restricted us. And I think in some ways, this is like the same fear, right? Like agoraphobia, the environment is almost so massive that it's constricting us, that we feel so small and so insignificant that we don't think we can, impact our environment the same way that someone with claustrophobia in a small space feels like they're trapped because they can't move freely in their environment. So at the root, I really think it's the same fear, but I think it's just expressed in fundamentally different triggers through different triggers. I'll hold off on my pick. I just want to hear your thoughts on the.
Yeah, I quite honestly, I think you nailed it. So congratulations. I think that was a very thorough and clear. And I was going to kind of repeat what you said. I'll just come right out and say I think if I have to pick between these two, I'm going to pick agoraphobia, and I think that's because in a claustrophobia situation and the fear of that, you do have. I feel like you have at least. You have a greater level of control, not necessarily a big one, but a greater one than agoraphobia. I just feel like the scale of claustrophobia is more manageable than the scale of agoraphobia. Because agoraphobia, agoraphobes, they don't leave their house. You can't go outside. The scale of that fear, as you mentioned, this idea of just being in an infinite universe we barely understand, to just be a single individual on a ball of rock spinning thousands of miles per hour around a bright hot sun is crazy. It's why we don't fly off this planet is bonkers. It's crazy. And maybe just because I understand that fear better, because I like on a 1 to 10 scale of agoraphobia, maybe I'm like a 2. Like I don't fear going outside my house, but like I get it. When it comes to claustrophobia, it's like, yeah, I get the small spaces, but maybe just because it doesn't bother me as much. Maybe I'm just personalizing this a little bit, but I just think that agoraphobia is kind of the not necessarily the crazier fear, but it's kind of just the broader fear, which I think makes it a little better. But I really could go either way. I don't know, Matt. What do you say?
Yeah, I was leaning a little bit more towards claustrophobia on this one. But I think your reasoning is sound and the argument's pretty reasonable.
Well, we can pull out the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll come down to that. I want to reason it out a little bit more. The claustrophobia, I think that I lean a little bit more toward that claustrophobia. I much prefer the open spaces to the closed. Whereas the claustrophobia, I can see like not wanting to, because you feel like you're going to get stuck, right? You're going to get trapped. You're not going to be able to get your way out. And the walls are closing in on you ever slowly. You're going to get stuck in that one spot. And that loss of control just seems a lot more present. It seems a lot more kind of in your face, like you're facing face to face with these closing walls. I don't know how to articulate it any better than that. I think I'll give it to agoraphobia. We can just choose that one. You put up a pretty good argument with that fear of control and fear of loss of control, and I think we both actually said that. So
yeah, in different words. For me, again, the simplest way I can put it is that claustrophobia is scary in the moment. Agoraphobia is scary constantly. And I think that's what makes it a better fear, is that claustrophobia is a very specific in the moment fear. It's not a daily life. The rate of occurrence of claustrophobia is far smaller than that of agoraphobia, and I think that puts it over the edge. So I'm going to make our note here in our sheet for agoraphobia, open spaces, and we will continue on here towards the halfway point, and we have another set of, shall we say, more interesting fears. Matt, you might put it this way: Scrooge McDuck would not like either of these fears because it is the fear of it is ablutophobia, the fear of bathing, or chromatophobia, the fear of money.
Scrooge McDuck didn't like bathing?
No, but he would dive into the pool. I guess it wasn't really a bathtub, but the pool of money.
Oh, he wouldn't have either of these fears. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This would be both would be bad for him to have.
Interesting sidebar. They actually did a study. And did you know that Scrooge McDuck was apparently analyzed, and they consider him the wealthiest cartoon character of all time?
I think he's the wealthiest fictional character of all time.
Yes, wealthiest fictional character of all time.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because they analyzed like how much money he had, or they counted up all his money and his net worth. They analyzed his net worth.
Someone had way too much time on their hands on that one.
Yeah. Pretty much.
With these two fears, I think that they're tough ones, right? Because they're very common occurrences, right? If we're going for rate of occurrence, these are two hard ones to avoid. Because hypothetically, you should be using them every day. Maybe you're not bathing every day, but that's on you. So rate of occurrence is very high on these. Danger level, I would really argue for both, is very low. Trying to think, money really has very little to no danger associated with it. Bathing, I mean, I guess you could hypothetically drown in your bathtub or slip and fall and hit your head, but really, I think the danger is low unless you're going to that psychological, like, next level shit where it's like, oh my God, my skin needs all the oils it has. I can't bathe or I'll die. Like, that's a whole nother level of fear. But I think that going between these two, man, it's a tough one because neither is. I think I have my pick, Matt, and I'm really just basing it on the one. I think I'm basing it on the one I understand the most, the one I get why you would have that fear. Because I think that's kind of how you have to approach these things. We're going to personalize it a little bit. We're human beings. And I think one of these I kind of understand, and one of these I really don't. I don't know, Matt. How are you kind of deciding between these two very unique fears?
I got to say, I think I can rationalize both of these fears. I think I can rationalize the fear of bathing. I don't like that one. I don't really like that one because if you're afraid of bathing, are you? I think you really just say you're afraid of water, right? Like hydrophobia. Like,
Well, but those
you
are,
know,
I mean, they're
what else would
technically
you be
separate
afraid of?
fears.
What are you? Well, I guess maybe it's like hydrophobia combined with claustrophobia. Like you're afraid of water and enclosed spaces at the same time. Like, I mean, what else could you be afraid of? Like a sea monster is
Well,
going to come out of the bathtub or something?
I mean,
Like
maybe soaps, maybe part of
maybe
that fear. Because again,
getting killed in a bath.
being hydrophobic, you're not going to drink a glass of water or go for a swim. Bathing is very specific to the act of cleaning, I would assume.
Yeah, maybe soaps or washcloths or things like that could frighten you. Um, and I think that the fear of money, there's like a couple different levels there for me. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking like, is it fear of the tangible money itself, like the object money? Is it fear of having money? Is it fear of like possessing too much money that you think that you just don't have the you're afraid of if you're afraid of having too much money, you're afraid of the consequences of like the things that comes with the responsibilities that comes with. You're afraid of being taken advantage of because you have too much money. Are you afraid of people devaluing your own personality because you have so much money that that's really why people develop relationships with you? Like where the chromatophobia is kind of all over the place. Like I just don't get, is it the fear of the literal of having money, or is it the fear of like touching or handling money itself, like as an object?
I might be able to get an
Um,
answer to that, actually.
because I could kind of see the why a fear would develop in both ways. Like money itself as a currency, an object is very, very dirty. It passes hands, thousands of people have touched the same money. Um, and the intrinsic responsibility that comes along with having money is another major fear that I think that is totally understandable, and logical to have. At the end of the day, between these two fears, bathing and money, I think I might go with the.
Do you want me to pick first?
Mm, yeah, you tell me your pick, and I'll.
Yeah, you seem to be on the fence, and I get that. This was a tough one.
Yeah,
I
this
think
was a really tough
I
one.
think for me, as I said earlier, it came down to the one that I think I understand the most, and like if I were suffering from which one would kind of make more sense. And that's why I'm picking fear of money. Fear of money, because I think fear of money is something that really anyone can have. I feel like living in such a late stage capitalist society like we do, where our entire value as a person is judged by how much money and things you have, I think that it is a more rationalized fear. I think it's a fear a lot more people suffer, especially compared to the fear of bathing, which I think is probably much more rare. And I think the act of bathing, while we did talk about the risks and why you might have that fear, I believe are actually much less than that of money. There actually are consequences associated with money. How your whole life is based around money. So to have that fear just makes a lot more sense to me than having a fear of bathing.
I was on the fence, but I was definitely leaning more towards the fear of money. I was leaning towards that one more. I think that's just a really interesting fear. Like I think to a degree it's more normal than we think. right? Like you at first glance, it's like, oh, fear of money, maybe fear of not having enough money. But I mean, that's just it. Like just the fear of the concept of money itself is totally, I think, totally justifiable in a society like ours.
Well,
Um, yeah,
like I tell people, I never want to win the lottery. I have no interest in winning the lottery. That terrifies the hell out of me because of just the amount of stress and insanity that goes with having that much money. And so right away, I think that's a good pick, and we're in agreement. Fear of money it is. Now, Matt, we're going to jump back over to the other side of the bracket, our more traditional fears. We've got two classics here going head to head, and that would be acrophobia, the fear of heights, versus trypanophobia, which is the fear of needles. The fear of needles. Matt, I think it's time for a sidebar. Matt, do you have any fears?
As a matter of fact, Sean, I do. And these are them. These two.
Whoa.
Fear of heights and fear of needles.
That was purely by accident.
It was perfect. Yeah. These are, if I had to pick any phobias from my list and said like I totally have these are them. I will say I think I've gotten better with both of them over the years. I think at a younger age, both of these would have totally, completely, debilitatingly terrified me, but they're still there. I don't think this might be a controversial to say, but I don't think we really get over our fears. I think that for some, to some degree, I think they're always going to be with us. But
it's like any mental illness, Matt. You can only treat it. There is no cure.
Yeah, totally agree. But yeah, I would say it's these two right here. How about yourself? Do you have any of these fears?
I don't really have any of the ones on the list today. But I will say in terms of my fears, I would chalk it up to flying. It used to be a serious fear. I would get like panic attacks. I was a terrible flyer for a while, and then once I started doing it for business and a lot more often, that's kind of been downgraded to an unpleasantness. Like I wouldn't say I'm fearful, I just don't like it. And so I would probably also say travel and just being in new situations, I guess, is a fear of mine that's also gotten better over time, but I still don't travel too often because that's relatively unpleasant for me. So, but those did not make it into our list, sadly, because we have got heights and needles, Matt. I think it is your turn to go first, and you can give us firsthand experience here.
Yeah.
As to which is the better fear.
Oh, man. Yeah. I'm thinking of between the two, they've both been pretty bad. I think that, all right, so we'll unpack each one. We'll start with fear of heights.
Break it down.
So you're up high. That the fear of panic, like I said, I think I mentioned it before. It's not the fear of the height; it's the fear of falling off of the height, or being pushed. You're in a very vulnerable place. I always think like you're on the edge of a cliff, or even looking over. I used to get it really bad when I would go to malls and look over the railing at on the top floor of a mall. And I just get the vertigo would be awful. Yeah, it's that feeling of vulnerability. Like you're on the edge of this precipice, and somebody could just come up behind you and push you right off. And before you got your bearings, you'd already be in the air on your way down. So being really high up leaves you very vulnerable. It makes you like I always felt very, very centered to the ground, or like I felt my need or my desire to be centered was extremely high. Like I wanted to just like hug the ground if I was really high up. Like I would get on the ground and like really try to like hang on to the ground, because otherwise I would just feel like I would fall right off the edge. That or get as far away from the edge as possible, if that were a possibility. Fear of needles. Running through the experience of fear of needles. I think that's one that's pretty common for young kids. And we some of us kind of grow out of that, but some of us don't. Like, I don't know if I fully have yet. I still try to avoid getting like shots when I can, just because of needles. That's that one. I think if I had to rationalize one over the other, and I think they're both pretty rational fears to have. I think I would probably say that the needles are scarier, like in terms of a rationalize that concept more, because like a needle can penetrate your skin. Like, think about that. It's something that gets into your body. It can actually penetrate the inner like workings of your being. And what's scarier than that? What's scarier than that? What's scarier than something that can get inside of you and deposit something that wasn't there before, or take something out that might be necessary? Like, so while I weigh them in my head, I just want to hear your thoughts on the.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I do think these are probably the two most practical we have in the entire bracket here. And I think, I won't repeat, you gave a good argument. There's reasons why both these things are scary, and there are fears for these, and why the fears are so common. I think the distinction, you mentioned this, I think even earlier in the show, which I thought was a really good way of putting it, where people aren't necessarily afraid of heights, they're afraid of falling. And you can't fall if you're not at a height. And I feel like if this had been the fear of falling, which I thought about putting in and I decided to go with heights, if it was the fear of falling, I might give it a little more credence. That being said, I still think I'm going to choose heights, and here's why. Man was not meant to be that high up. Man was not meant to fly. Man was not meant to build tall buildings. We are defying God himself in doing these things, and that's why it's scary. My body, I am a 26-year-old man. My body has been poked, cut, sliced, jabbed in so many ways and so many times across my entire life. Needles, for the most part, and I know this isn't exclusive, for the most part is done in a sterile doctor's office setting. So really, the risk of the needle is rather low, to be honest. Whereas at being at a tall height, you get close, especially, near a cliff or something without a rail or some sort of barrier protector. I would say I do have a fear of falling, but as long as there's a railing, I'm pretty much okay. It's not the height, it's the falling. If you're in that situation, your risk is much greater and your lack of control is much lower. So I think the fear of heights is the better fear, because needles, while I understand the theory, if you really take the time to think about it, they're not that scary.
Yeah, I think you actually won me over to the heights. I think I got to give it over to heights. I wasn't on needles per se. I think I was somewhere like dead in the middle, but I think your argument definitely won me over to heights. I think that just that concept of loss of control, the fact that being that high up can cause you to feel like you lost control or are losing control. That is really what's scary about the heights. That at any moment, because you could fall off the edge. While they're very scary, because they can get in, they get through your skin. It's kind of like I think it's a much more short-term fear. Like, to get rid of the fear of the needle, you just need to discard the needle. But to get rid of the fear of the heights, I think you need to like actually physically move your surrounding, which can be more difficult at times.
Well, yeah, I think you're going to run into heights more often than needles, especially for flying. I mean, I really think that's where the fear of flying comes from. Again, it's really a fear of heights, really a fear of falling. If the plane was just sitting on the ground, you're not afraid of the plane. So I think we're in agreement there. That's a good matchup. Matt, we have up next on our wacky side the most specific matchup here, and I want to include both of these because they are so weirdly specific, and I love them. And the first is papaphobia, which is the fear of the Pope. The other, which was pitched to us by Up for Debate fan and podcaster extraordinaire Dan Miller, who really wanted us to talk about tristidecaphobia, which is the fear of the number 13. Both very specific. I think I get to go first on this one. Yeah, these are weird. These are kind of weird. And at first, my very first reaction when I saw these head to head was, okay, the number 13 is scarier. Immediately I said that's the better fear. And then I really thought about it. And I said, is that true? Because you know what is scary? The Pope. If you think this all-powerful man who speaks directly to God has his own little country in the middle of another country, who has piles of jewels and rubies and controls a religion around the world. He controls billions of people.
The largest branch of Christianity.
I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. All powerful, elected, quote unquote, by a very secretive group, serves until he dies, hypothetically. There's something very scary about in the same way any good conspiracy theory has that villain at the top of it. I understand that the Pope makes a great foil for a fear. Now, that being said, in the defense of the number 13, I don't know why people... I should have looked this up ahead of time, lack of preparation, as to why the number 13 specifically has become kind of synonymous with fear and terror and Halloween and the devil and those sorts of things, but why it's such an unlucky number. But, wow, what a fantastically weird fear to be specifically afraid of a single number. And I feel like that can manifest itself in so many fun ways. Like you never get a baker's dozen of bagels, or you can't, obviously the day of the month, you can't do things on because you're afraid. And if you see like 13 children, like you run away. I don't even know what being afraid of the number 13 does to your life, but I'm kind of fascinated by like the Pope you can avoid. You can successfully, you're not going to run into the Pope at the Kroger, but the number 13 is probably the 13th most popular number. You're going to run into it in a lot of places. And so that I can really kind of see both sides of this argument. I do have a pick, but Matt, what do you think of the Pope versus the number 13?
This is the part of the show because I get to delve into a little bit of, we could talk about with papophobia. I think that's really a fear that comes out of the Reformation. All right. So like you have these people who are disconcerted with Catholicism in Europe. And they have this fear that the Pope is, running their lives, which actually to a certain degree is a pretty justifiable, reasonable concern for a lot of people. Like the Catholic Church, which during the Reformation in Western Europe was pretty much the only church. And he did have an extraordinarily high amount of power and prestige during the Middle Ages. I think the fear also carried over after the Reformation into the early United States. Papophobia is extremely common among the 13 colonies, even to the point where it resulted in lynchings of Catholics by many English and German settlers. The fear of the Pope kind of synonymous with a fear of a king or a despot. Like people in the early American colonists were very independent, very much laissez-faire, very much like decentralize the government, like for the most part, not like uniformly speaking, but for the most part, the Pope represented Europe and European monarchies kind of intervening in this new country's affairs. And I think it was more that kind of fear. And now we might think that fear, papophobia, disappeared. We'd like to think that it disappeared, but it really didn't. When a man by the name of John F. Kennedy was running for president as the first Roman Catholic, eventually the first Roman Catholic to hold office, the only Roman Catholic to hold office in the United States, there was a lot of fear, particularly among the American South, the Bible Belt, that because Kennedy was a Catholic, he was in league with the Pope directly, and that he, as a Catholic, had to subordinate himself to Rome and specifically to the Pope, to the Vatican. That any law he tried to pass, any law that he vetoed, would all come from the direct decision. He would have a pipeline to the Pope. It even resulted in a conspiracy theory that some people touted, that John F. Kennedy had a direct tunnel underneath the White House that led directly to the Vatican. This was a real conspiracy theory that people actually believed, that he had a direct tunnel to the Vatican, that he used it to visit the Pope, and he would get official advice or official rulings from the Pope that he would then carry back to the United States. These were the rumors that were going around during his first and during the campaigning. So Pat, that's the little bit of the history of papophobia. Triskaidekaphobia, I don't know too much about. I'd really like to know more about it. There are a bunch of different, from what I could tell in reading about it online, there's a bunch of different sources for triskaidekaphobia. One of them I thought was interesting, and it's interesting that you put them in the same category, these two fears, because the fear that the source I read about for fear of the number 13 comes from Christianity again. The fact that there were 12 disciples, and then the 13th one was Judas, I think, was like the 13th disciple. So he's viewed as like bad luck or bad or evil. That's the only one that kind of made sense to me of where this fear originated, where it came from.
Yeah. I have an interesting article here. 13 reasons people think the number 13 is unlucky. Most of them are around that. You mentioned the Last Supper. Many believe that either the Last Supper or the crucifixion occurred on the 13th. A lot of biblical references where 13 is unlucky. There were 13 steps to the gallows historically as well. There are a bunch in here. Some of these are women menstruate roughly 13 times per year. I don't know what that has to do with it. A witch's coven has 13 members. 12 is considered a perfect number. It stands to reason then that trying to improve upon it by adding a digit is a very bad idea, and so on and so forth. So Matt, which one are you gonna choose here?
Which of these fears? I think this is a real challenge here. I think I'm going to give it to fear of the number 13. I think that's just so much more debilitating to have that fear. Like you said before, like how many times are you going to run into the Pope in your lifetime? Right? Like, but if you're afraid of the number 13, you have to basically change your entire kind of living situation to accommodate that fear. It's a very strong fear to have is this triskaidekaphobia. And I think it's a lot harder to overcome. Like, if we're looking at a rehab situation for both these fears, like I imagine someone showing videos of the Pope doing really nice things, like blessing poor and crippled people, or like, giving a lot of money to charity, or, just being a really nice guy. Like Pope Francis he seems like everyone's favorite grandpa. Like, but the rehab for number 13 is what? Like, how do you even like rehab that fear? Be like, show somebody the picture of the number 13, like, and tell them it's not bad. I don't know. Maybe show them like happy things in sets of 13, or give them 13 pieces of candy. I think there's a lot more work to do, a lot more work to be done to understanding this fear.
Yeah, Matt, I disagree with you. I think you're wrong. I'm going with papophobia, and I think that's because at the end of the day, when it comes to danger level, the number 13 is simply that. It's just a number. The Pope can actually order someone to kill you. So I think, while it's unlikely, I agree, it's probably not going to happen to you. The Pope has a lot more power than the number 13.
Well, I think, all right, here's where I'm going to give you my rebuttal. I think that So somebody who has triskaidekaphobia can make the argument that, you know, they stepped on 13 bricks coming home and now they're going to die because the universe is ordering its writ of execution on them. Because the universe is out to get you if you invoke this number 13.
Yeah, but the Pope is a real person. I can say I broke my ankle on my way home and, oh, the Pope, he's up to something again. He must have done this. He must have asked God to curse my ankle.
Yeah, but people aren't scary. Ideas are scary.
But the idea of the Pope is scary.
But the Pope is a concrete person that you can see.
With his own military.
Right? He does. He has the Swiss Guard. Number 13, though, like, that's much more mystical. It's much more like the universe is the number 13.
That's why it's not scary.
13 is everywhere. That's why it's terrifying, because, I mean, like, in an extreme circumstance, all right, somebody with papophobia could meet the Pope one-on-one in a room. Like, in a perfect world, the therapist would introduce this papophobic person to the Pope himself, and he could see that he's not out to get him, that they're not, like, you know, something to be feared. The number 13, they can't do that. They can't sit the guy in the room with the number 13 and like, see, he's a regular guy. Yeah,
sure, exposure therapy, but I think you can more easily make the argument to someone with a fear of the number 13 that it is just a number and that there is nothing behind it. Anytime you go, like, no, the Pope isn't really anything to be fearful of. I listed like 20 reasons on this show why the Pope is scary, and they're semi-valid. Now, Matt, in the interest of time, we have got to move on, which means we are implementing break glass in case of emergency. It is time for the up for debate tiebreaker. And the way it's going to work is I have my D20, and I'll let you choose, Matt, because we're high or low. The Pope or the number 13.
Are we activating the Dice Cam 3000?
No, the Dice Cam is out of commission. That only works on game nights. Okay. But right, you'll have to take my word for it when I tell you what we rolled. Matt, the Pope, high or low?
High.
All right. And our dice roll is a 3, which means the number 13 is our winning fear.
Okay.
That wasn't too bad. All right, we've got to keep chugging here. Our last normal, quote-unquote, normal fear, head-to-head. Which of these are scarier, Matt? Do you have coulrophobia, the fear of clowns, or phasmophobia, the fear of ghosts?
Oh, boy. Oh, come on. All right. This is probably the easiest one of the night.
Oh, I think so, too, but please tell me you're going the other way.
Okay. I'm really hoping that we are on different paths. The weaker one here is fear of clowns. That's weak. It's weak sauce. I got to go with ghosts. Ghosts are scarier. Ghosts are definitely scarier. Ghosts are invisible. You can't see them until you see them, and then they're gone. Clowns are like, they show up at your kid's birthday. Like, how scary is that? I don't know. I don't really get it. I don't really get this fear around clowns. They're just people with makeup. Like, get over yourselves.
Matt, you are
any particular reason I should be persuaded?
You're always, we disagree, and you are incorrect. And there's a very simple reason, and it's very similar, by the way, to my Pope versus number 13 argument, which I lost. And that is this. There once was a man named John Wayne Gacy who was literally a clown and murdered people. There is no such thing as ghosts. You are afraid of nothing. It is a stupid fear. It is the easiest of everything on this list. It is the easiest fear to overcome because it does not exist. Period. End of story.
I don't know
if
I say that definitively. Can you definitively say that ghosts do not exist?
It is the official. It's in the Up for Debate canon. The official stance of this program is that ghosts are not real. Take that to the bank.
All right. When you're walking alone, you're walking home alone on a dark night, dark and quiet night,
and then a red balloon floats by, and you look around.
Nothing to hear but the crunching of the fall leaves under your feet. and all of a sudden a mist sets in, a fog sets in. Okay, and you're looking around, and you're passing the graveyard. Okay, are you expecting a clown to pop out or a ghost?
One of those is possible and far more likely, and that's a clown.
I don't know. I think the ghost is
And clowns
scarier.
are also weird because they have no place in modern society. They're anachronistic. They have no business being here. They are I get why clowns were cool back in whenever clowns were cool, but I don't get why they're cool today. They don't make it's just odd. Nobody likes clowns. It's like being afraid of Nickelback. It's like I kind of get that. Like they're weird because why are they here if nobody likes them? They just will not go away.
See, I find that so ironic because clowns were at one time such a source of joy for people. People were thoroughly entertained by clowns, and now we're saying that they're scary.
So we're jesters and mimes, but tastes change.
I could kind of see it. They look kind of weird when they have all that makeup and stuff on, and you don't know who's underneath. Like it's like a Scooby-Doo episode. But with a ghost, you also it's kind of it's very interesting that you put them both in the same category again. Like we don't know why either one of them are here. Like they both appear, and they both kind of have.
They both won't leave.
They both won't leave. They both have something that they want or are demanding of you, I guess. I think that the clowns though, I feel like I could outrun a clown. I don't know if I could outrun a ghost. I don't know if you could ever outrun a ghost.
I think
might just always be there,
Very fair point. If ghosts were real, I agree. I don't think you could outrun a ghost.
Just the fact that it's a supernatural force that
doesn't exist. Yes.
There. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we can definitively say they don't exist.
It's in the canon. I said it.
Ghost.
It is officially in 100 episodes from now. It'll still be canon.
I mean, there's got to be something there if thousands of people across time have seen these spiritual beings.
Yeah, but Matt, this is not. We will do a separate episode on Up for Debate, episode 180 ? Are ghosts real? But that's not what this is about. It's about the fear of ghosts and the fear of clowns.
I'm not saying the ghost hunter people that go into the I think that's all stupid. That's all just for show. The ghost ghost hunters and all that. But I don't know. With legitimate fear, in mind of which one is the better fear. Which one is it more reasonable? Is it more debilitating to be afraid of? I still got to go with ghosts because if you're that afraid of ghosts and you start to attribute things happening to these ghosts or to these spirits, that can be pretty debilitating. That can be pretty extreme. When we look at the criteria, and it can be hard to overcome. You know what? I'm going to give it to clowns.
All right. Good answer.
Right. I think I'm going to give it to clowns because
I'm writing it down.
Because that's equally hard, if not even more hard to overcome. There's that fear because I don't know, just fear of ghosts kind of seems more, it's more childish.
Well, for me, a fear of ghosts is a symptom of a broader psychological problem. Doctor, I'm hearing voices and seeing things that aren't there. No, that's not a fear of ghosts. You're crazy. That's what I'm saying. When it comes to clowns, I totally get, okay, I understand, makes sense. They're in your face. They're aggressive. Nobody wants them. Clowns suck.
Yeah. I mean, you punch a clown in the face. You can't really do that to a ghost.
Because they're not real. Because they don't exist. Okay, we got to move on.
I don't think that argument flies.
I
think
so flies.
Because you say they don't exist doesn't mean they don't actually exist. You don't have definitive proof that they don't or that they do.
It's like being afraid of zombies. It's that's a stupid fear because it's not a real thing. Anyhow, we are over an hour already, so we have to get to our final matchup of the night before people shut off their podcast players, and that would be, it's on our more fun side, and this is perfect, very timely, and that would be Samhainophobia, which is the fear of Halloween, or diphenophobia, the fear of dinner parties. Matt, why don't you start us off? What's going on with these?
The diphenophobia, the fear of dinner parties, like, is that just the same as being afraid of like people?
It's
Or
a
being
social anxiety, I would say.
Yes, so that's what I meant. Like so that seems more like a social anxiety. Like,
But I just like, because there are other fears for anxiety. This is specific to dinner parties.
dinner parties.
Yes.
So being afraid of attending a dinner party or afraid of hosting a dinner party?
It did not say, but it's not like being afraid of
dinner parties in general.
of a rave
Just
or of a
not like
baseball
the whole
game.
thing.
Just dinner parties.
All right. I don't get that. I just don't get the dinner. I don't get why you'd be afraid of a dinner party. I can get why you would have a social anxiety. That's a legitimate, I think, a very real anxiety for sure. For then, I think it affects way more people than most of the things on this list. Social anxiety, but like dinner parties specifically, to have that like specific, that sounds like a result of a traumatic experience. Like something really bad must have happened at a dinner party in your childhood to make you have a specific phobia of dinner parties. In which case, yeah, that's a totally real and legitimate fear. Fear of Halloween. Halloween is scary. It's a scary time. People dress up in costumes, do all kinds of different things. Both of these are, to an extent, I think, very social phobias. Fear of social events, that take part in our society. I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about these?
Well, I would make the argument I have some degree of a fear of dinner parties. I get anxious before dinner parties. I don't find them very pleasant, but that's true of most social situations. So I can't really specifically parse out dinner parties above anything else. But for me, I think the fear of Halloween is kind of a weak fear. Like, if that's your, really, like, of all the fears, that's your fear, it's one night a year. There's really, the danger level on Halloween in reality, in the movies, oh my goodness, you would think everyone gets murdered on Halloween, but in reality, it's a pretty mild day of the year. Like, I feel like 4th of July is more dangerous than Halloween. There's really not much to be it's mostly a children-based holiday, maybe the occasional hooligan, but really, Halloween is a fun holiday. So I don't, unless they're talking about specifically Halloween the movie, but I think that's unlikely. So I think Halloween is a weak fear, and I would give it to dinner parties because I think that's a thing people actually suffer from. And I think that there is it goes back to social anxiety, but I think to some degree it's a semi-justified fear if you're going into a dinner party where you may not know the people or the hosts, or you may be expected to bring something, or, just being uncomfortable in social situations. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, well, I mean, we're really getting into the depths of psychology here now, but is a fear anxiety?
Well, an anxiety is a side effect it's a symptom of a fear. It's the outcome. I am afraid of something, it makes me anxious.
So, yeah, so a fear causes anxiety.
Sure.
So in this case, are we really afraid of dinner parties, or are we just anxious about them? Like, do they just make people uncomfortable? Are people, I mean, this sounds like something that people are legitimately afraid. Like, they're like, I won't go to a dinner party. I won't like host a dinner party ever. Like, I'm afraid of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid of what might happen at them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm afraid of, something going terribly wrong at a dinner party.
Mm-hmm.
I think I get it to some degree. I think I get it. I think I understand, like, the awkward silences. Maybe it's people you don't know, or maybe it's, we're too comfortable, too settled and something just bad out of the blue can happen because, that's how it always is, the calm before the storm. Maybe that's some reasons to be afraid of dinner parties. Be that as it may, I think that being afraid of Halloween is a pretty childish thing. Like, unless something really traumatic happened to you during Halloween and you fear and you loathe it to a certain degree, just being afraid of it for just because of like the hype or around the holiday itself, I don't think is that great of a fear. So I got to give this one to dinner parties.
And I got to be honest with you, Matt. That for me is the upset of the bracket, because when I included that, I'm like, that's not a very interesting or aggressive fear by any stretch. But I think putting it up against Halloween kind of made it, really helped out a lot. So
Yeah, who knows how far it'll go, but
well, Matt, would you like to hear a little preview of our Elite Eight, which we'll get to on our next episode?
sure.
Here we go. These are your matchups for the Elite Eight on next week's episode. It's going to be snakes versus open spaces, which you don't want to find snakes in your open spaces. We'll also see the Battle of Heights versus clowns. In addition, we'll see holes versus money, which if you're in one of those countries that has holes in your money, pay no attention. And then lastly, the number 13 versus a dinner party. Now, next week on our episode, we are going to go through all of them, and we're going to do the Elite Eight, the Final Four, the whatever they call the last two, the championship game, and we will pick a winner. There will be a single winner at the end of this thing, but you'll have to tune in next time to find out. For part 2 of Cheers for Fears, that is going to do it here. Now, Matt, I don't know what order the episodes are going to be released in, because we have the movie draft sitting in a closet, and I don't know if it will be released next week, and we'll just do it in between and break these up. We may do these back to back and do it after that. I'll just tease everybody. We did the movie draft. It's already happened, and it was a ton of fun. We had 10 players, 5 teams. In under an hour, we gave away 30 movies. We had a lot of fun doing it. It was, I think, one of the best we've ever done. So look forward to that coming up on the feed. In addition to part 2 of this episode, you can get everything you need to know on our website at upfordebate.tv. I won't go through the whole list. Click the subscribe button. There you'll get links to everywhere you can, get the episodes, Overcast, Apple Podcasts, all that, and where you can follow us on Twitter at UpForDebateTV, on Facebook, where we stream live these episodes, and more. And you can give us your feedback. Don't panic. I'm not. UpForDebateTV@gmail.com. My goodness, do too many of these. All right. We're way over time. Thanks, everybody. Hope you had as much fun as we did going through these. Have a fun and exciting Halloween. Have no fear, because we solved all of them for you. That's it. We did it. You're welcome, America. On behalf of Matt, I'm Sean. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time for more great discussion here on Up for Debate.